Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And yesterday the groups for Stage 3 of CDL 2021 were released, and wow, we're going to have some absolutely banging matchups coming up over the next month or so. Also on the side of the New York subliners, it seems they may have made another roster change. Definitely some shuffles going on right now with their starting lineup. What is their roster going to look like for Stage 3? What does that mean for the strength of Group B? Intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Like if you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe if you are new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. Firstly, wanted to mention this because Crim talked about yesterday getting back into streaming a little bit more often, which I think is kind of welcome given the OpTic guys have taken a bit of a hiatus, certainly. And as he says right here, apologies to everyone who was subbed during the hiatus from Crimsix. I think there was some pretty entertaining stuff coming out last night on his stream. This is a TJHaLy stream, but I'm not TJHaLy, no cam, garbage mic, all of that good stuff. So let's talk about this New York roster first, right? Because a couple of days ago we said, okay, it looked like Hydra was going to be joining the starting team in place of Mac. He was coming down to the challenger side, and then there was some drama with Parasite getting kicked out of that team because it looked like Simp was going to be joining the New York subliners additionally as a starting player with DiamondCon stepping out, but for whatever reason it doesn't seem like that went through, and therefore Simp ended up joining onto their, effectively their former Western team, and Parasite was kicked out of a spot and he wasn't too happy about it. However, things kind of were going down on the timeline last night, and as Chrome points out right here, not 100% sure what's going on, but I believe that Mac might have been called back up to the starting team for the subliners. That would mean, Sib, Gintroid, Fire need a new fourth, and Parasite, I'm not sure if he's happy or disappointed about this whole situation. Maybe he's looking back at his old team, dropping him, and now thinking, wow, they were an absolute shambles because Mac has now dipped back from their lineup. This is what some people are pointing out here on the on the Game Battles website, with now it seems like this Cap guy, I'm not really sure who this is, but him joining alongside Gintroid, Fire, and Sib on this squad. So it seems like Mac is nowhere to be seen in the Challengers region, which probably means he's back on the starting team for New York. Now, what does that mean for the New York team, right? Because there's so many questions. The guess might be, and this is another tweet that came out from Sib, unfortunately, yesterday, so obviously he finds himself in a pretty tough spot at the present time. And this also comes out from Crane in reply, Gintroid, Fire, Mac, and Sib saying, okay, that is no longer the case right now. And this comes out from Clayster yesterday as well, talking about Hydra playing some Counter-Strike together. This is the only game I did better than him at. Jesus Christ, this kid is good at absolutely everything, CSGO included. So, okay, this kind of says to me that maybe, Clayster and Hydra forming a bit of a nice bond. Probably they're not going to have removed Hydra from the starting team. So my guess is that if Sib isn't on this squad, that they are just trialing out maybe a swap situation with Mac and DiamondCon, right? Because that was a big question mark to me when this, it was initially announced that Hydra was going to be coming into lineup. Okay, Clayster's going to be there as the main AR, no doubts about that. Asim's going to be there as your entry SMG guy, no doubts about that. But then, okay, you've got Hydra who can seemingly run both weapons. I mean, he's been doing it with an SMG for a number of years now to great effect, but he comes into the North American Challengers region and starts dominating with the QBZ at times, with other assault rifles as well. I'm sure he'd be pretty good at. So, there is a thought, okay, well, let's say we try out some different roles here, and maybe actually it makes more sense to have Mac still back in the team. I think Mac honestly is a great and talented player as well, and I think he didn't necessarily deserve to get dropped from this team. Diamond had also done some great things as well. We'll have a look at some stats in a second here, but it seems like to me, at least my perspective from the outside, that possibly they're trying an Asim, Clayster, Mac, and Hydra lineup, with Hydra maybe in that kind of flex role nowadays, rather than having DiamondCon in that role and Hydra on the SMG. Maybe it's just a short-term trial thing. They're going to trial it out for the next couple of days in scrims, see if it works, and then see what they want to do going into the Stage 3 of the season, because I thought this was kind of interesting as well from COD Complex right here, talking about the number of 1 versus X situations won so far this season. DiamondCon actually has the most of them with 9, and even if you look at it just in terms of 1v2 and 1v3 only, DiamondCon also has the most with 5. So obviously pretty impressive performances from him so far this season, and not like he necessarily deserves to get dropped from this team. Now Mac comes back maybe, and Hydra is still going to be there on that starting lineup, which I think does kind of make sense from reading between the lines here. But at the same time, this team seemed like it needed a change, and someone has to find themselves as the old man out at some point or another. Let's talk about the group selection show that went down yesterday then. So this was actually very interesting. We kind of could predict how some of these pools were going to end up, but I didn't actually predict it to go the way it ended up doing. So this is how it worked, and I'll just point this out on screen for you guys. I made this, I think it's super ugly, so I won't keep it on screen for too long. But effectively, the teams get to choose across the pool, right? So if you're Toronto Ultra, you won. Therefore, you get the first seed in Group A. FaZe the second seed, of course, in Group, they get the first seed in Group B because they came second at the major. So Toronto get to make the first pick as to who goes into the other group, and then it goes back and forth with these lines. So, every team picks every other team, and then you get, the 6 team groups, and they're absolutely stacked, honestly. It's I knew this was going to be insane, but having a look at these is something else. So let's look at it from this perspective again. It's a little bit less ugly on the screen. Toronto, their first pick was OpTic Chicago. Now, this already I thought was very interesting indeed, because, OpTic have placed 4th at the first major, 6th at the the second major, and Dallas Empire, for example, have placed second at the third major, or the first major, and third at the second major. So you would have thought maybe that Toronto would have decided to put Dallas in the other group and send OpTic back there instead. I know that, Marky B was saying, okay, yeah, we wanted to put the FaZe OpTic matchup back on the agenda, and there were some banging matchups down here in Group B, certainly, and Group A is, no slouch either, as we will get into in the coming minutes. But okay, Toronto decided to put OpTic into Group B, which is interesting, right? Maybe they think they don't match up quite as well against them as they do, let's say, against the Dallas Empire. There also was some very interesting points, actually, that came out. We'll talk about what Soupy said on the Reddit right here, saying, okay, this could actually be a deliberate and smart gambit from Toronto to give them the best chance of denying Dallas points. Because if you look at this from the perspective right now of the CDL rankings, Ultra find themselves in 5th, and obviously they want to move themselves up the pecking order. FaZe are, well, not exactly uncatchable. Certainly things can happen. We've still got 3 more stages, but it seems like FaZe should be in a good spot to get the number 1 seed for the World Championship. But Ultra are probably looking right now and they're thinking, okay, OpTic, subliners, let's try and get ourselves up the pecking order a bit here. I mean, Dallas Empire in 2nd right now. So maybe they're thinking, okay, how do we best deny Dallas Empire points so we can try and catch up and get to 2nd, maybe, or something like that, and maybe get to 1st if things really go our way for the rest of the season. So effectively saying that, look, if you put Dallas into B, they have winning records against New York, Los Angeles, Thieves, Surge, and London, the teams that ended up being in that group. You wouldn't necessarily have known at the time you picked OpTic they would have gone into that group, but I guess you could have kind of thought about it in advance and decided, okay, which teams will probably place who where, and then thinking about, okay, which teams will likely end up in that pool. So, okay, Toronto were pretty much guaranteed to get Rokkr in their group, which does kind of make sense. So might as well bring in Dallas, who has a bad record against Rokkr, 1 and 2. Every series has gone to game 5. Dallas might end up getting 3rd in that group, let's say, if you're Toronto and thinking about this from a pretty strategic perspective. And then, okay, maybe they're more confident facing Dallas than OpTic anyway. And then if Dallas do get 3rd, they'll most likely get a difficult matchup in the first round of the major, which potentially allows, Toronto the opportunity to try and deny Dallas points by sending OpTic over to the other side and getting Dallas in their own pool. So maybe that's not their thought process at all, but I'm sure there is some strategy involved in some of these decision makings. So it goes back and forth. FaZe choose Dallas. Obviously, Dallas choose Los Angeles Thieves. Then OpTic choose Minnesota Rokkr. So it goes back and forth until we have these groups that you can see on screen right now. And these are absolute bangers, I'm sure. So let's talk about Group A real quick, because a lot of people have been saying, well, Group A actually, even though Group B has, all the nice colors right here and it's very pretty, and I think there are some incredible matchups over there, Group A also has its fair share of, blockbuster potential. Because Toronto Ultra, we know they are phenomenal right now, at least, how they plays at the major. Dallas Empire, Minnesota Rokkr, that series always goes down to the wire. It is honestly quite tough to call this group, because Ultra, Empire, Rokkr, you should say, okay, they're going to be top 3. But Mutineers are making roster changes. Havoc has come into that lineup now. Do they have some sort of honeymoon period where they improve? Paris Legion also, Temp comes into that team. I think that is actually a much scarier team than people maybe give it credit for. And LAG have upset potential when they start winning Search and Destroys on a regular basis, which sometimes they do, and they're able to take down any team in a Game 5, as we saw them do to Atlanta FaZe in regular play in Stage 2. So Group A is no slouch by any means, but Group B, I think, does still, take the cake in my opinion, because we've got FaZe, we've got OpTic. We don't really know what FaZe we're going to get necessarily. Yes, they got to the Grand Finals again. They're ridiculously good in hardpoint and control, but if their Search and Destroy doesn't improve rapidly, then, they are in a questionable spot, right? Because they can easily go Game 5 and potentially lose to a number of these teams. I mean, they lost 5 maps in a Grand Final to Ultra, so, they can certainly go down to some of these squads. I think that they'll find a way to get through it, but FaZe versus OpTic, again, the first time we've had this series since way back in Stage 1. That is, phenomenal news for us as Call of Duty fans. And then we've got OpTic versus Thieves as well happening in this group, because Los Angeles Thieves looked way better at the major. Now, look, whether they ran through the losers bracket in pretty impressive fashion before getting 3-0'd by the Toronto Ultra, that was the new squad with Drazah in and Slasher out. Now, whether they can maintain that level going forwards, that is a question. Did they have their honeymoon now and now it's kind of over? Is Kenny best placed in that main assault rifle role? They could drop off somewhat, but at the same time they could easily continue to get better with more practice with the team. So I think the Thieves are a pretty scary team, and if they had have played OpTic, if they'd have beaten Toronto and OpTic had have beaten Rokkr, they would have played each other at the major. I do not think that would have been a walkover for OpTic by any means. I think that could have had a Game 5 on the cards, and probably a similar thing as we see it right here in this group. And then of course we've got New York in this group also making roster changes. Could have a similar situation to the Mutineers and Legion on the other side, with Hydra now in the team. I mean, of course, they've been a very scary squad so far this season, and probably will continue to be so, especially if they make changes which improve the firepower on their team. Then you've got Seattle Surge in this group, who have been improving drastically as of late. I think they were somewhat unlucky, to be honest, not to place higher than they did at the major. Prestinni has been on fire, and then of course you've got Royal Ravens down there, who are in obviously a very tough spot in this group, up against the absolute monsters that they have in their pool. But at the same time, they've still taken some pretty good teams to Game 5. If they can piece things together, they they can probably have an upset series win or two right here. So this group could be absolute chaos. I think Group A could well be as well. Just wanted to mention this real quick. Got this really nice clean @ over here at the Twitter now. So if you guys would like to @ me in stuff on Twitter to make sure I don't miss it, then it's at TacticalRab now rather than at the TacticalRab. Beautiful stuff. Been waiting years for this moment. Let's talk about exactly what the schedule looks like for the upcoming weeks. So we can have piece together some of the interesting matchups right here, because OpTic actually have a very nice schedule, I think, for leaning themselves into this run that they're going to try and have this stage. Because okay, they play Surge first, then they play Ravens. So in theory, they have their two easiest matchups first. They've beat Surge a couple of times now, so they should be able to get the better of them. And then they play the Ravens as well. So OpTic are certainly looking for a 2-0 week right here. I mean, Ultra play Empire last match of the week as well. There's certainly some bangers. I mean, every single week here. This is technically the London home series. And then we have OpTic's next game is against the Thieves on the Sunday this time around. So I mean, every single, I would point out some individual matchups, but so many of them have potential to be so good. And then the final week is the Dallas home series. And OpTic this week play the Subliners, so effectively their matchups get progressively harder throughout the week. And now they play Subliners, and then they play FaZe finally on the Sunday. And Empire play Rokkr as well. That's going to be another banger. So there's so many great matchups right here, especially this Sunday. I mean, some of these games are phenomenal. And who knows how some of these teams are going to look. We might be looking at this game, Empire versus Mutineers now, and thinking, okay, maybe it's not too much of a big deal. But if Mutineers improve drastically, if Paris Legion, for example, improve drastically with Temp, and if Subliners become, if they hit top form, I think this could be another phenomenal stage. It was chaos in stage 2. I think the stage 3 could be even better, with especially how good Toronto are looking, and some of the teams that are underperforming looking to make roster changes to get even better than they already are. As Round 11 Stats points out, there are 4 matchups that are going to happen this stage that we haven't seen so far. Empire, Gorillas, OpTic, Royal Ravens, FaZe versus Surge, and Rokkr versus Gorillas. So who knows, maybe Surge have the 3-0 ice against Atlanta FaZe when they do match up against them. Thought this is kind of funny as well, that Arcitys points out right here. So too easy for aBeZy, say FaZe. aBeZy nominated for Esports Play of the Month for our friends at Esports Awards for his Ace on Express versus Subliners. Pretty nice play, of course, but as Arcitys says, that is our only round we even won on that map. So certainly, Search and Destroy improvements need to be happening for this team. And speaking actually of Florida getting pretty good, this comes out from Awakening yesterday. 62 eliminations in a scrim. They're playing up against Los Angeles Gorillas. He dropped 7,500 damage almost. Havoc's on this team just being the facilitator, I suppose. Skies is just sitting in Hill. And Awakening's dropping 62 eliminations. If this guy comes to play and the rest of his team, forms well around him and actually can put up good numbers in the SMG slaying category, which has been, somewhat inconsistent so far for this team, then, I think that Group A is actually probably scarier than maybe people are giving it credit for. But enjoy to hear your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, I'd greatly appreciate a like on the video. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm that you enjoyed this content. Other people like you may enjoy this content as well. And I've grown the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you for watching as always. Take care. And I will see you next time.